Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you step by step how I created this amazing product reveal VFX animation in Blender. We're going to cover camera tracking, simulations, compositing and much more. Let's dive in. Okay, in this particular animation, I'm going to use Blender to track it, okay? So let's get to it. Let's get to VFX, motion tracking. We're going to drag the footage in and this is it. We're going to note down the frame rate, 23.98. Come here to frame rate and set it to that, and then go to the render settings under color management, view transform standard. Okay, so we're going to get the accurate color of the footage. Okay, so next thing we're going to do now is to set sim frames and then prefetch. After that, I like to double my pattern size anytime I'm working with footage that is above 1080p times 2, because we can do mass operations inside here. So match, keyframe, previous frame, normalize, and tracking settings. Set the correlation to 0.9. So it's going to add markers to where it's 90% sure of tracking very well. After that, next thing we're going to do now is to detect features. So you come here, open this up, margin 10, threshold 0.2, and distance 100. So that is all. Now we're going to track it forward. After the tracking is done, we are the last frame now. We're going to hit detect features one more time, and everything is still set as it was before. So we're going to track backwards now. So as it's done tracking, we're going to come to the middle. I'm going to use frame 120 for this, and we're going to hit detect features one more time. And then we're going to track forward and backwards on this particular frame. Come back to 120, track backwards. So we are done tracking. Before we head to solve, we're going to manually select some trackers that went so off. Something like this. We're going to clean it up. Select these two and clean it up. Look at the whole line and see if there's any tracker that is so off. I'm going to delete this and then we'll head to solve. Okay, select these three options: focal length, optical center, and radial distortion, and then solve camera motion. So it's done solving, and this is our solve error, 2.21 pixels. Okay, for us to have a very good track, we need to reduce the solve error to a number very low, below 1. Okay, so how we're going to do that is by first of all unchecking this focal length so it doesn't keep calculating focal lengths over and over again. Clean up, go to clean up, and then clean tracks. We're going to bring this number up to something like this, and then hit X, delete, and then solve the camera motion once more. So as you can see now, after solving that, we've got the solve error down to 0.59. We can make it better. Okay, from here, let's clean up one more time. I'm going to X to delete, and I'm going to solve camera motion. Okay, that's a very good track. Solve error is 0.39 pixels. Okay, let's do it one more time. I believe this should be the last time. Let's solve from here. 0.35 pixels. I think we can work with this now. Okay, so let's start to create our scene. And if you want to know how I'm seeing this info, is come to this click display and then select info. Okay, so you can see the personal average error for each track. Okay, so I'm going to use this as my origin, and then I'm going to set this as my y-axis. Okay, and then I need 3 markers to set as the floor. I'm going to select this. This has a very low solve error. Select this, and then maybe let's select this. All of them are below 0.2, and okay, this one is 0.26. I think that's nice. To achieve the best results, it's good to use markers that have very low solve error to set as your floor. So this is it. We are done setting the scene here. So the next thing we're going to do now is to set the scale. Okay, now to set the scale, I'm going to use 2 markers on the door to assume a human being's height. Okay, I'm going to select these 2, and I'm going to set this distance to 2, and this is going to act as 2 meters, and that's a very tall human being. I'm going to set scale, and this is it. Okay, I think we are done. We can now come here, scene setup, set as background. It's going to set the footage as a background, and then set tracking scene. So for now, we're done with this motion tracking layout. Let's head over to the 3D layout. So now we're in the 3D layout. Okay, I'm going to split this view. Over here, we're going to be looking at the camera. Over here, now I'm going to select the camera, increase the opacity here so I can see it well. So now I just noticed something, that our axes are not aligning well. Let's realign the axis one more time. I'm going to set this as my origin and select this as set Y. Okay, so now I think it's better now. Okay, let's play through the footage. Okay, now let's raise this cube. So now our floor is sticking very well. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all this and delete this. Okay, I'm going to add a plane, scale it up like this, go to edit mode, subdivide. Okay, in this side I'm going to view in wireframe, bring this down Y axis. Okay, so this is a better way to preview your scene. Okay, we had a very wonderful track. Okay, if you zoom in, you notice that our floor is not gliding at all. It's sticking perfectly to the floor of the footage. So next thing we're going to do now, which is very important in VFX, is to recreate this building. Okay, all of them are going to act as shadow catchers. Okay, so to do that very effectively, you need to come here and activate motion tracking. Okay, we're going to remodel the scene using these stuffs as guidelines. Okay, this is what's going to guide us in remodeling the scene. So now let me reduce it a little bit. Okay, I think this is okay. So what we're going to do next is let's stretch this one out, scale Y, come to the top view and bring it front. You can also scale it in the x-axis. Okay, so it's sticking well with the trackers on the floor. So next thing we're going to do is model this side of the wall. So come here to this tracker here, select it, and you can see over here. So I'm going to start modeling from here. Okay, I'm going to add a plane by 90 to get the right normals. I don't think it rotated well. To see the normals face orientation, okay, we need the blue to be over here. So I'm going to rotate it again, RY 180. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So come to the top view and we're going to align the wall with this. Okay, so what we're going to do, rotate it like this and scale it on the local Y axis. That's by hitting Y 2 times, and then over here drag it up. Okay, come to edit mode, edge select, sorry, and then drag this up in the Z axis. Okay, and if you look very well, you notice it's sticking well with this. Okay, the next thing we're going to do now, because if you notice from the footage, the balls were coming out from these walls, okay, from this door. So now that's what we're going to do now. We're going to recreate it, okay, in this scene. So how we're going to do that is come over to this place, touch here, zoom in, touch this point. Okay, so when we look at our scene here, we're gonna see the points here. You can also activate motion tracking over here and lower it very well, so that when we select a particular tracker here, we can also see it here to be sure it's at the right place. What we're going to do now is to add an edge loop on this. In edit mode, Ctrl R and bring it down to this point. The next thing is add another edge loop and drag it over to this point here. Okay, so now while selecting this in vertex select mode, bring it like this. Okay, and then I'm going to add another edge loop here, bring it closer to this point. Try to match it as closely as possible. Okay, drag it in like this. So let's correct this one. Okay, so we can now add another edge loop and bring it down to this point. Okay, bring it here and take this up. Okay, now we have a face here. Okay, I'm now going to extrude it in this x-axis and take it in. Okay, this is a rough idea of how you're going to achieve all this. Okay, so this is not a modeling tutorial. I already have this whole scene blocked out. Okay, I've imported the mesh I used in blocking out the scene. This is it here. Let's clean this up to look neat and play through the footage. See, everything is sticking well. Let's import the product. So this is the product here. Now the model is imported. We're going to head to cloth simulation. Okay, before we head to cloth simulation, it's good to know that cloth simulation and simulations in general run smoother and faster when using low poly mesh as a collision. Let me show you how I created the low poly mesh for our product. If I select this product and head over to here, statistics, we're going to see that this container has 3,000 faces. Okay, so in as much as 3,000 faces is not much, but we're going to get it very, very low now. Okay, so first of all, let me isolate this and Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's go to the front view. Let's add a cylinder. Okay, let's go to wireframe G, bring it up here. Let's go to edit mode, bring this up to this point. Okay, and then select the top face, come down and bring it down to this point. Match it as closely as possible. Now holding Alt, we're going to select everything, scale, Shift Z, bring it in. Okay, next thing we're going to do now is to add an edge loop here, another one here, and holding Alt, we're going to go to face mode, select this point and Alt S. We're going to shrink it in like this. Okay, so we just created a low poly version of this cylinder, of this product. Now see, the product has 3,000 faces. Now our mesh has 98 faces, and that's going to make the cloth simulation run very, very smooth. Okay, so with this same method, we're going to create low poly version of the other meshes. So this is the low poly version of the product. Okay, so now when we're doing a simulation, this is what we're going to use as the collision. Okay, now let's head to the simulation. Go to top view and add a plane. I'm gonna scale it up and then bring it up. This simulation we're going to do now is going to come in two phases. Okay, the first simulation is when we're going to set the cover of the product, and then the second simulation is going to be when we are dragging the product off. Okay, so this is our cloths. Okay, so now let's start our simulation. Before that, apply scale for this, go to edit mode, subdivide. Okay, subdivide one more time, maybe another one. Okay, this is okay, this is enough. So Now in the collision object we're going to use, okay, this plane is inside this place. Okay, we're going to add it to a cloth collection. So after adding it, we're going to set collision for all these products, the low poly version of them. So select all of them and set collision. Okay, now we're going to come to this place and we're going to set collision also to the floor, and then these 3 poles. Okay, so let's hide the product for now. Now let's add cloth simulation to this plane. Come over here and assign a cloth physics to it. Come here and select cotton preset, down to collision, self collision, and then we hit play to run the simulation. Okay, gonna shade smooth and then apply a subdivision surface, and make sure the subdiv is coming after the cloth simulation. Okay, very important. So I don't think I like this initial setup. Okay, I'm gonna go back and redo it again. Come to the top view, bring this front a bit and run it again. Okay, still cool but not very cool. Okay, let's scale it in a little bit, bring it front and run another one. And now after scaling it in, we forgot to apply scale. Very important when you have to do anything concerning scale. Okay, I've noticed it's not covering this product here. Okay, there's a common problem we're going to encounter with this, which is the cloth going into this building. Okay, so there's a good way for us to avoid it. Okay, first of all, let's shift the cloth a bit in and run the simulation again. If you have done simulations very well in Blender, you notice that it's all about trials and trials and trials. Okay, so I'm just noticing something now. The pole is going through this cloth. Okay, how to rectify that is selecting the cloth and come over to the cloth physics, bump up the quality steps to something like 10 and run the simulation again. Okay, if you notice, it's no more going through. The cloth is coming towards this direction. Okay, let's shift it in a bit like this and then run it again. Okay, I think this is cool. What we're going to do to solve this issue over here is by animating the collision of this wall here. Okay, so how we're going to do that is this. Normally, if you set this as a collision and you run this animation, see what's going on. It's going to scatter what we want here. Okay, so what we want it to do now is, we don't want it to start as a collision in the beginning of the animation. Okay, we want, as the cloth is touching something like here, it's now going to turn on as a collision. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Okay, so at this point, let's take something like 40 frame 40. So how we're going to animate the collision, when we hover here, we're going to turn it off and hit I. Okay, it's going to set a keyframe, and then you come to the next frame 41 and you activate it and hit I. It's going to activate the collision. Okay, so until frame 40, this is going to remain as a normal mesh. From 41 and above, it's now going to become a collision. So let's see how it's going to work. See? Beautiful. It's give us what we want. It's give us exactly what we want. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this point. Okay, if you notice, it's not clipping in at all. We can also do that for this particular wall here. Okay, let's do the same thing for this wall. Set a collision, turn it off, come to frame 40, set a keyframe I, go to the next and activate it, set another keyframe I. Let's see how the simulation is going to be. Okay, perfect. Our cloth is exactly where we want it to be. Okay, so at this point we're done with the first stage of the cloth simulation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply this cloth simulation modifier. Okay, now the simulation is gone. From the beginning, this is how our cloth is going to start. Okay, so that was a good start. Next thing we're going to do now is to drag this cloth off this product. Okay, that's the product review. So how we're going to do that is using a hook modifier. Okay, let's go to edit mode on the cloth. We're going to select a portion of the cloth here, come to vertex group, hook, and assign. Okay, and then Control H, hook to new object. Okay, this is it. So now we're going to run another simulation. After selecting this cloth, we'll come to the physics and add a cloth physics. Set the preset to cotton, quality steps to 10, and then come down to collision, self collision, and then under shape we're going to select that vertex group we just created, hook. Okay, so come to the modifier and set the cloth before the subdivision. Okay, so and that is it. Now we're going to animate. Let's bring this to the beginning. So now we're going to animate this empty. Okay, this empty is the hook modifier here. So what we're going to do now is we come to frame 20 and we set a keyframe, location, rotation, come to 40, raise it up like this, bring it like this, set another keyframe, and then 65, we take it out. Take it out like this and set another keyframe. So now we're going to set these walls as collision. We're not going to use these keyframes anymore because we're done with the first one. So we're going to delete the keyframes and just set it as a collision object. Okay, come here, activate it, and the floor is already a collision object, and then this particular wall, make it a collision. Okay, these little poles are still collision objects. So we're good to go. Let's test our simulation. Okay, that's too fast. That's too fast. Okay, select the empty. Let's bring it far to make it slow. Okay, still too fast. Let's drag it out like this, like bring this like this. See. I think this particular point is too far. Let's bring it in a bit. Okay, location, rotation. Okay. Yes, I think I like this simulation. Oh, I just noticed something. It's like it's still poking through this rod here, this pole. Oh yes, it just did. Okay, to see through the back of this stuff, just activate back face calling. Okay, so we can look at it from any angle. Let's check this out one more time. Oh yes, it just went through. Okay, so what we're going to do about that, Let's increase the quality steps of this to 13 and do the simulation again. The higher the quality steps, the better the simulation is going to be, but also the slower it's going to be. And I think we just solved the issue now. Yes, that is beautiful. That is amazing. Okay, I think the empty is still getting up very fast. Let's draw this out a bit. Good. Okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. Okay, once we're happy with the simulation, we're just going to bake it. Okay, come on the cache, end frame. We're going to stop at frame. Let's continue and see. Okay, nope, just went crazy. So now we're going to maybe bake it at frame 140 because there's no need baking it at 250 because we're not going to see it again. I think 140 is perfect. So 140 and we're going to bake. The baking is done. Let's watch it again and make sure that pole is not poking through. Okay, it's perfect now. The next thing we're going to do now is to deactivate the collision collection. So this is it. Okay, we just faked the collision. So this is the normal thing to do, or the best thing to do when doing simulations, okay, to save time and still get an accurate result. So the next thing we're going to do now is a softball simulation coming out from these doors. So let's add the balls. I'm going to start from here. Shift A, icosphere, scale it in, bring it up a bit. Remember, don't forget to apply scale. Okay, now we're in the physics properties. We're going to add a soft body to this. Come to simulation. I use 0.2 speed, turn off the goal, under edges, bending 2.0, stiffness 0.8, field weight, turn gravity 0. After that, add a collision so that the ball can also collide with the other balls. Okay, and make sure in the modifier stack that the soft body is before the collision. Okay, so now when we hit play, nothing is going to happen because it turned off gravity. So now what we're going to do is select this, make sure there are collisions, and then I'm going to add force field, force, and bring it back here. Okay, so the idea is that this force is going to be pushing the balls out from here. So bump the strength up to 3, and then when you hit play, are you seeing it? So I think this is too big. Let's reduce it and apply scale, and then shade smooth, and we can add a subdivision to it. Control 1. Make sure the subdivision is the last thing here. Okay, so it's not going to affect the simulations. Okay, it's just to make the ball look finer. So now we'll run the simulation again. Now the ball is coming straight like this. Okay, but we want the ball to come up. We want the ball to go up. Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to add another force here to drag the balls up. Force, and then in the properties we're going to make it -8. The positive value is going to push the ball out, the negative value is going to drag it. Okay, let's run that again. Okay, now the ball is going up because of this force field here. Okay, that's all for the soft body simulation. What we're going to do now is to duplicate these meshes. Okay, I'm going to duplicate it, Shift D, and just scale it randomly. Let's add it to a collection. Select everything, balls. Now, as everything is selected, Ctrl A to apply scale. Now let's run it again. If you notice now, the balls are colliding with each other. Now the force field is going to push it out. Calculating the simulations, and the collision is making it slow. Okay, so this is how it starts flying up. Okay, to make it faster, we're going to bring the ball a bit out. Okay, bring it here, and also pay attention to this view to make sure it's not showing in its initial state. So from here, and then we're going to make some go back. Make this go back a little bit, and then this is okay, and make sure it's not colliding with the collision. Okay, so now we're just seeing that this one is colliding, so we're gonna bring it in. So let's do it again. Okay, that's the idea. That is how I created the ball simulation from the original video. Okay, you notice they are now coming out. Okay, so it's just very easy. Just the next thing you're going to do now is to duplicate these balls and add some here. Okay, let me select the balls. Now it's going to become slower to simulate. Select all the balls. When you're done, make sure one is selected, and then come to the catch and bake simulation 254 and bake all dynamics. Okay, once it's all baked, it's now going to be very, very fast. Okay, it's now moving in real time, and that is beautiful. So now let's get to setting up materials. So first of all, we're going to start with this. Come to the shader, come to the camera view. I'm going to add material here, and I'm going to delete the principled BSDF and add a diffuse BSDF. Drag the footage here. I'm going to use this. Now Ctrl T, and I'm going to use window coordinates. Okay, so this is it. In the repeats, I'm going to select mirror. Okay, so depends on the view of the window. So now the window we're using now is the camera. Okay, so we're going to select every other thing here in the walls by double clicking on the walls collection, and then making sure this one is the last one selected. Okay, or it has an orange outline. So Ctrl L, link materials, and voila, everything is set correctly now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is to set the world. Let's come to object world. I'm going to use an HDRI. Okay, environmental texture, plug it here. We're gonna use cycles, GPU compute. So this is HDRI I used. Ctrl T, I'm gonna set it to 8.5 or 8.6. That's the rotation I used. Okay, so now in this view it's going to be dark. Okay, what I did was setting this up to 5. That's the lighting I used. And this particular wall here, I set it as an emission because it's very, very, very bright. So what I did, I deleted this. Okay, Okay, no, I'm not supposed to delete it first, okay, because if you notice, all the models were affected. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here to make another version of the material, okay, before I now delete. So I add emission, plug this here and plug this here, bump it up to 2. So this is it. We're done setting the lighting. Now the next thing we're going to do now is set everything as shadow catcher. But before that, let's set the material of this plane, of this cloth. I'm going to use this, set it to this, okay, and that is it. You can come to the UV editing, select all, you can rotate it if that's not how you want it to be. Okay, you can rotate 180 to bring it like this. You can bring it up side to bring down the logo in any way you want it to be. Okay, I brought it down a bit so that the logo is going to, part of the logo is going to show in the beginning. So this is it. Just select the render mode for here and then come to the render settings, come to the film, select transparent, and then the next thing we're going to do now is to set all these as shadow catchers. Okay, so we're going to do that. Select one of it and then come down to here under visibility, set as shadow catcher. It's going to become transparent a bit. We're going to set all the walls here as shadow catchers because that's the main thing they're going to do here, apart from being a collision to the simulations. Okay, so what we're going to do now is select everything here and make sure this last one is the one we just added as a shadow catcher. Come over here under visibility, shadow catcher, copy to selected here. Okay, now all of them here now are shadow catchers. So this is our scene. This is our scene. So this is how it's going to be. Let's view it from here. Okay, I just noticed something. Our image sequence is not actually moving. Okay, so we're going to rectify that now. So come to this stuff here, going to material view. We need to set the frames to 254 and then auto refresh. So now after that, you notice it's now going to flow. We have rectified that now. So the next thing we're going to do now is to set materials for the balls. Okay, select one of the balls, come to the shading, and add principal BSDF here. Now I want to set random colors to this. Start by adding a color ramp, and then we're going to control click to add some points here. Okay, come to this first one, bump it up and give it any color we want. So now we're going to set this to constant. Okay, and then add an object info, then set random to factor. Okay, now what we're going to do next is to select every ball here and then Ctrl L, link materials. Now all the materials are now going to have different colors from here, all the balls. So this is how it's going to look. Okay, so you can choose any collection of color you want, and that is it. That is how I set the materials. So the next thing we're going to do now is to arrange the view layers for final rendering. Come up here and add a new view layer, and we're going to name this shadow. And then come to this other one. We're going to delete this background view layer. Blender added this automatically for us after using the Blender tracking. Rename this to RGBA. Okay, this RGBA will be the foreground, and the other ones, the shadow is going to be the shadow pass or the shadow view layer. Okay, what we're going to do next is to come here and activate indirect and hold out. On this particular view layer, the walls are going to be indirect this product, the cloth and the balls, is what is going to be direct on this foreground layer. Okay, so now if you notice, as I set it as indirect, I can still see the inside of this room, and that's not supposed to be so. Okay, so how we're going to arrange that now is by setting it as a holdout. Okay, the walls. So now anything inside this place is going to be cut out by this wall. Okay, so now let's head to shadow view layer. We're going to set every other stuff here as indirect. Now we're going to turn off this collision. We don't need it at all here. The product will be indirect, the cloth will be indirect, and the balls will be indirect. Okay, something is going on here. The cylinder we created in the beginning, so I'm going to delete it. I don't need it. So this is it. This is our shadow view layer. We're going to head to rendering. Before we start the final rendering, we're going to come to the compositing. Okay, we're going to delete this on distortion and scale. Blender added this for us, and we're going to use this. This one is going to be shadow, and this is going to be RGBA. So we're going to render one frame. We're going to set this to 100 for the compositing. Okay, the rendering is done, and this is the compositing here. To render out the animations, I'm going to use the file output node. Come here to node. We're going to use OpenEXR multilayer, float half, DWA, lossy, and we're going to add different inputs. Come over here, RGBA, and here shadow. So this is where we're now going to define a file directory, and then you come here, the RGBA, plug it to RGBA, and then the shadow to the shadow. And this is it. You can now render your animation from here, and you're good to go. So now, after the animation rendering, let's head over to the main compositing. Compositing is where everything comes together. Let's ensure our CG element blends seamlessly with the footage. So we're going to do the compositing here now. Okay, we're using a fresh Blender scene. Come over to compositing, delete everything here, and use nodes. Okay, how I like to set my compositing scene is this way. I'm going to split this view. I'm going to come here and set this to image editor, and then come here, viewer node, and disable backdrop here. Now we're going to delete this render layer. There's something very important you need to do. Come to the resolution and set this to the resolution of the footage we're going to use. You can set this back to 23.98, or you can leave it at 24. And then end frame 24254. And then what we're going to do now is to import the footage. Import the image sequence we used in the render, and for this tutorial I'm going to use the original image sequence I used in the project. Shift A, image sequence, locate the image sequence and import it. Now if you notice, it has RGB and shadow. So now let's view this here, and let's set this color management to standard. Okay, now I can see the actual color of this image. So now the next thing we're going to do now is to merge these on top of this. First of all, we're going to merge the RGB on top of the shadow using an alpha over node. Okay, and Blender compositing works from bottom to top. The bottom is the foreground and the top is the background. Okay, now this is it. Mix it together. Now we need to duplicate this and bring it on top and place this here, and this is it. So what we're going to do is come here and set it to 254 frames or 250, because that's what I rendered. 250 frames and auto refresh. Okay, now the footage is working well. The next thing we're going to do now is to match the color of this footage. Okay, it's very important in CG compositing. So I want to duplicate this stuff here. Instead of using one node to achieve it, I'm going to split it like this. Okay, now what I want to do now is to match the black levels, black and high levels of this my CG object to the scene. Okay, so if you come to this CG element and you check the black levels here, you're going to see we are having something 0.001 in the darkest level of our CG element, okay? And then if we check the darkest level of our footage, you're having 0.003. So it's not supposed to be so. So what we're going to do about that is we're going to raise the black levels of this RGBA, and to do that, we're going to add RGB curves. Okay, I'm going to add it here and then select the black level here, come here and raise it up a bit by 0.003. Now, if we check it, you see we now have almost the same level of blackness or darkness with the darkest level of the footage, okay? This move is very, very crucial in CG compositing so that your CG element is not going to look off. And if you notice something is going on here, if you notice, it's affecting everything in this scene. And it's not supposed to be so. So what we're going to actually do to solve that is to add an alpha convert node. Put it before and after any color correction. So in this start, we're going to put it to straight, and then we're going to duplicate it here and pre-multiplied. Now if you notice, this is only affecting the CG element and not the whole scene. Next thing we're going to do now is to do masking, because if you notice, our CG element is going behind this lamp, and it's not supposed to be so. It's supposed to be behind it, not above it, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do masking here, okay, at this particular point. How we're going to do that is come over to this plus sign under VFX masking. Okay, now we're going to bring in our footage. After bringing in our footage, next thing we're going to do now is add a new mask. I'm going to name this mask lamp. So after that, we're going to mask this lamp here. By holding Control, click, you can add points. You can add points here and precisely mask it out. I'm going to do a rough masking here just to give you an idea of how it's going to be. I'm going to speed this up now. Okay, that's it. After creating it like this is a mask now. Okay, now let's head over to compositing and use the mask to mask this area out. So what we're going to do, because this area contains the shadow and the RGBA, so we are not going to use the mask only on the RGBA, we're going to use it on the combination of the RGBA and shadow, and that is right here. So what we're going to do now is to set alpha, plug it here, and then mask, plug it here, take this mask here, and then set the mask to the lamp we just created. And if you notice, it's showing only this place and not the whole area. That means the mask needs to be inverted, okay? Viewing the mask, you're going to see it's like this, okay? And that means it's going to show only the white area. We want it to invert, okay? So what we're going to do now is to add an invert color node, and when we view this, you notice the white is now out. So that means when we view this, everything here is going to show apart from here, okay? And this is a moving shot. That means it's going to be animated, okay? So now we did this with frame 147. When we go to 150, you notice that the mask has gone all out, okay? So what we're going to do now is select this, come back to 147 and activate this auto keying icon, okay? Then when you go to frame 150, you can move this like this, okay? There are some situations whereby you will need to manually drag each point, okay, to fit into this lamp, okay? 147, let's bring it here, okay? So now it's now following the lamp, okay? So anything you do here in the masking and animating of the mask, just by including this node here, is going to mask it out here, okay? And that is it. I used DaVinci Resolve to do my compositing and final color grading. I personally did the rotoscopy of this wire here, okay? Look at it over here. Let's see the mask I used. This is the mask, and then this is the mask of the lamp, okay? See it here, and that's it. This is where I did the compositing of everything, so that the balloon is going to go under the wire and not above the wire. So you need to take your time and make it worth it. I added another RGB curve here on the shadow to bring up the black level, okay? So it's going to match with the scene. So that is it, guys. This is how I created this product review VFX animation. And that's it, guys. You just created a stunning VFX scene from scratch. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. See you in the next one.